The hushed reverence of the university's grand auditorium was a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Elara's heart. On stage, bathed in the warm glow of a single spotlight, stood Professor Alistair Finch, his silver-tongued oratory weaving a narrative of his own brilliance. He spoke of a breakthrough in cellular regeneration, a Phoenix protocol that promised to revolutionize medicine. He was accepting the prestigious Hawthorne Prize, the culmination of a career built on the bedrock of a lie. In the back row, a ghost in the celebratory machine, sat Elara, her program from the event clenched in a white-knuckled fist. The real architect of the Phoenix Protocol wasn't basking in the limelight. He was 300 miles away, a shattered man in a quiet, sterile room, his mind a labyrinth of what once was. Her brother, Liam. Liam had been more than a student to Finch. He had been a disciple, a gangly, perpetually coffee-stained whirlwind of intellectual curiosity. Liam had practically lived in the university's advanced biology lab. He saw Finch not just as a mentor, but as a kindred spirit, a fellow explorer on the precipice of discovery. Liam's doctoral thesis, the culmination of 6 years of relentless dedication, was the Phoenix Protocol. He had poured his soul into the research, often forgoing sleep and sustenance, fueled by the pure, unadulterated joy of scientific inquiry. Elara remembered the late-night calls, Liam's voice crackling with an excitement so potent she could almost taste the ozone of his next breakthrough. He spoke of Finch with a reverence bordering on worship, quoting his platitudes and lauding his guidance. "He sees the big picture, Elara," he'd say, his voice thick with admiration. "He's helping me refine the methodology, ensuring every variable is accounted for." The betrayal, when it came, was as swift and silent as a surgical incision. Liam, on the verge of publishing, had shared his completed manuscript with Finch for a final review. It was a formality, a gesture of respect. A week later, Finch had summoned him to his office. The memory of Liam's recounting of that meeting was seared into Elara's mind. Finch, his face a mask of feigned sympathy, had systematically dismantled Liam's research. He'd called it fundamentally flawed, riddled with inconsistencies, and a dead end. He had advised Liam to abandon the project, to salvage what he could and start anew. Crushed, Liam had retreated. The light in his eyes, once a supernova of intellectual fire, dimmed to a faint, flickering ember. He trusted Finch. He believed him. He shelved the Phoenix Protocol, the weight of his perceived failure, a physical burden that stooped his shoulders and silenced his once vibrant voice. 6 months later, the scientific community was ablaze with the announcement of Professor Alistair Finch's revolutionary Phoenix Protocol. The abstract, published in a leading journal, was a mirror image of Liam's work, with only cosmetic alterations to the terminology. The methodology, the data, the groundbreaking conclusions. It was all Liam's. The ensuing media frenzy had catapulted Finch to academic stardom. Liam, upon seeing the news, had simply broken. A quiet, complete shattering of a brilliant mind. He was now a resident of a private care facility, his conversations a fractured mosaic of scientific jargon and whispered accusations against a man the world hailed as a visionary. Elara, a data analyst with a mind as sharp and methodical as her brother's, had found his original manuscript, meticulously backed up on a forgotten hard drive. The evidence was irrefutable, but the academic world was a fortified city, and Finch was its king. A direct accusation would be dismissed as the ramblings of a disgruntled former student, a narrative easily spun by a man of Finch's stature. No, Elara knew that to expose a man like Finch, she had to dismantle his empire from within, using the very tools he valued most, reputation and prestige. Her plan was a slow-burning fuse, a symphony of digital whispers and carefully orchestrated revelations. She began by creating a series of anonymous online profiles on academic forums and social media platforms. These weren't fire-breathing trolls, but carefully crafted personas of inquisitive researchers and graduate students. They began by asking innocent questions about the Phoenix Protocol, probing the publicly available data with a surgical precision that bordered on the obsessive. "Fascinating work by Professor Finch," one persona would post on a popular research forum. "Has anyone tried to replicate the initial protein folding simulations? I'm encountering some anomalies." Another, on a different platform, would muse, "The cellular regeneration rates are astounding. I'm curious about the control group data. It seems unusually perfect." These were not accusations, but pinpricks of doubt, tiny fissures in the marble facade of Finch's discovery. Elara, using her expertise in data analysis, had found the subtle statistical impossibilities in Finch's published data, the telltale signs of a rushed and imperfectly stolen work. Liam, in his obsessive pursuit of perfection, had run thousands of simulations, his data a testament to the messy, unpredictable nature of true scientific discovery. Finch, in his haste to publish, had smoothed the rough edges, creating a data set that was too clean, too perfect. The next phase of her plan involved a disgruntled former colleague of Finch's, a man named Dr. Miles Corbin. Corbin, a brilliant but bitter researcher, had been professionally overshadowed by Finch for years. Elara, using another of her anonymous personas, reached out to him, feeding him a steady stream of the anomalies she had unearthed. She framed it as a collaborative effort to understand the nuances of the Phoenix Protocol. Corbin, his professional pride pricked by the inconsistencies, took the bait. He began his own, more public inquiry. At a major international conference with Finch in the audience, Corbin presented a paper that, while not directly accusatory, raised a series of pointed and uncomfortable questions about the methodology of the Phoenix Protocol. He highlighted the statistical improbabilities, the lack of outlier data, and the uncanny resemblance to some unpublished theoretical work he had come across. The air in the auditorium, once thick with adulation for Finch, was now charged with a palpable tension. Finch, for the first time, looked rattled. He dismissed Corbin's questions as professional jealousy, a weak and transparent defense that only fueled the growing whispers. The seeds of doubt, so carefully planted by Elara, were beginning to sprout. The final act of Elara's revenge was a masterstroke of digital subterfuge. She knew that Finch, a man obsessed with his own legacy, would have a digital archive of his research, his communications, his entire academic life. She also knew from Liam's stories that Finch was arrogant and technologically complacent, using a sophisticated phishing scam disguised as an invitation to an exclusive invitation-only symposium on cellular regeneration. Elara gained access to Finch's university server. It was a treasure trove. She found the original email from Liam, the one with his manuscript attached. She found Finch's early drafts, where he had systematically replaced Liam's name with his own. She found correspondence with the journal, where he had pressured the editors for an expedited review, and the final damning piece of evidence, a series of self-congratulatory emails to a trusted colleague, boasting about how he had salvaged a promising but deeply flawed piece of research from a mentally unstable graduate student. The day of the Hawthorne Prize ceremony was the day Elara had chosen for her checkmate. As Finch stood on stage, accepting the thunderous applause, a pre-scheduled email was sent to a curated list of recipients, the entire faculty of the university's science department, the editors of every major scientific journal, the board of the Hawthorne Prize, and a handful of influential science journalists. The email was concise, professional, and devastating. It contained a link to a secure, anonymous website where Elara had uploaded everything. Liam's original manuscript, time-stamped and digitally signed, the email exchanges between Liam and Finch, Finch's plagiarized drafts, and the damning emails to his colleague. She titled the website, The Finch Protocol, an investigation into academic integrity. The effect was instantaneous. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium as phones began to buzz. The applause faltered, replaced by a confused murmur. On stage, Finch's triumphant smile dissolved into a mask of bewildered horror as he saw the faces in the front row, a sea of shocked and accusing stares. The university chancellor, who had just handed him the Hawthorne Prize, was now looking at him with an expression of icy fury. The aftermath was a brutal and public crucifixion. the Hawthorne Prize was rescinded. The university launched a full-scale investigation, which quickly led to Finch's dismissal and the retraction of his published work. His name, once a symbol of academic brilliance, became a byword for fraud and deceit. He was a pariah, a ghost in the hallowed halls he had once commanded. Elara never revealed her identity. She watched the downfall of Alistair Finch from the quiet anonymity of her apartment, a silent avenger who had sought not vengeance, but a restoration of truth. Her victory was not in Finch's destruction, but in the slow, painstaking process of clearing her brother's name. Her final act was not one of revenge, but of redemption. With the help of Dr. Corbin, who was now a staunch advocate for Liam, she resubmitted the Phoenix Protocol to a prestigious journal, this time with its rightful author, Liam. The paper was accepted, not just for its groundbreaking science, but for the story behind it, a cautionary tale of ambition, betrayal, and the enduring power of truth. Elara's last visit to Liam was different. She sat by his bed, the newly published journal in her hands. She read him the abstract, her voice clear and steady. For the first time in a long time, a flicker of recognition, a spark of the old Liam ignited in his eyes. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched his name on the page. A single tear traced a path down his cheek. It was not a tear of sorrow, but of a quiet, profound, and long-awaited peace. The phoenix, in its own way, had finally risen from the ashes.